Welcome to The Thriving Child, where my speakers and I are discussing ways to get your child from frustrated and failing to focused and happy. I'm your host, Lyda Osinga, and my guest today is Andy Hutchinson. Andy is a violinist and a teacher, and he plays with Mark Wood and Vic Ferrari. He has a very extensive bio that I encourage you to read on his speaker page. So Andy, I've been asking everyone, what inspired you to become a musician?
It was a presentation that happened in fourth grade, and the music teacher came in and played a little bit of violin and said, if you want to play, go tell your parents to come to a meeting. And honestly, that started this whole process.
Wow, that's really early. A lot of people haven't even thought about it in fourth grade. So were there people in your life that encouraged you to learn music?
I was the first musician in my family, so there was a lot of encouragement to keep going, but it wasn't that I had a family idol that I said, I want to be like that someday. So it was just the encouragement and the excitement as I learned that my parents and my friends and family showed me.
Well, that's great. So one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is you have other musical avenues, but the one I most wanted to talk to you about is being a rock musician on your violin. So how did you start exploring the rock side?
Well, I'm going to start back a little ways. I was trained traditionally as a classical violinist and went through high school with a very, very good teacher that got me set up properly with technique and intonation and all the important musical things. Once I got into college, I was kind of trying to, as a music educator, look at other things that could happen musically, because to teach the same repertoire that everybody was teaching all the time, to me kind of became mundane, maybe a little. I met a guy named Randy Sabine, who's a jazz violinist. He plays in the Fiddlehead Blues Band, and he came to do a clinic, and it kind of sparked my interest. And Randy approached me and said, hey, would you like to learn a little bit more about this? So I started to study with Randy and ultimately toured in Europe with him. When I came back, I did a few clinics at some music camps with Randy, and I saw the kids light up as we were teaching them some jazz and some improvisation, which then morphed into some rock and roll and some more familiar tunes. Once we connected kids to stuff that they, understood maybe more so than the William Tell Overture and Egmont, and always talked about Bach, Beethoven, and Mozart, we started to talk about things like AC/DC and Creed and, all these bands that were out there, and then country stuff came into play where, oh, that cool fiddle part for Devil Went Down to Georgia, can I learn that? So once we were able to connect that with the kids, I saw excitement. I saw them practicing because they wanted to be as good as what they heard on the radio.
That's a really good point, to be as good as what they heard on the radio. And I know that most violinists think that the devil should have won, because I think that part's harder.
Absolutely.
So what's the most important thing that you see for a child to become better, either in classically trained or in rock?
I think either way, they need to be exposed to what sounds good or what that ideal is, and then know that it takes a long time to get from here to here, and that good steady practice will get you farther than this quick prepping of one piece. In my studio, my students focus on technique and etudes, scales, and bowing structure a lot more than we talk about even playing a tune. We're kind of circumventing the question a little bit, but I think by building the toolbox and getting them excited to be able to do these advanced techniques, then applying it to the music that they enjoy most is going to keep them driven for excellence. If they're always struggling every piece that they're trying to learn, I think that delays that advancement per se.
And that's, it's more of the enjoyment is what you're talking about, and then building the skills rather than focusing on concert performance. Even though that's a part of it, you're not only focused on that.
Oh, absolutely not. Actually, by building those techniques and by moving slowly and having a lot of little goals that they're accomplishing, I got that scale. I've learned that bowing technique. I've figured out how to make my bow bounce.
Hmm.
All those little successes that actually ultimately lead to prepping all this other music, they're going to see stuff that they go, oh yeah, I've done that before. I think by having that type of a connection, they thrive to move forward instead of always hitting the wall of, I can't play that measure, I can't do that, I don't know how to shift there. If we can take care of that outside of the music then doesn't become as frustrating to prepare. And ultimately, we're working towards a concert.
That's a really good point. So you're not teaching to the test or teaching to the concert, you're teaching the skills that they need so that later it's quickly assimilated when they get it in a piece.
Yes, it's quickly attained that way.
Oh, that's a great idea. So what is the most important way a parent can be supportive of a child that's doing music, art, athletics?
I think always telling them that they're doing great, even if that song doesn't quite sound like the parent thinks it should, but always giving that positive reinforcement. I ask my parents not to ever ask their students to practice. I know, shocker, right? But if they could take just a couple minutes and say, hey, would you play me that song that I love? Would you play me this new song that you're working on? And when they get that violin out or the cello or whatever they're playing, and the hardest part really is getting it out of the case and setting up the music stand and getting the music all ready to go. If the parents are asking them to play something, they're going to get it out. And ultimately, it's not going to be a 2-minute play session. They've got it all out. Now they're going to actually work on some things. And, hey, mom, listen to this. Hey, dad, can you grandma and grandpa just came over. Can I play them my song? I think giving them those opportunities instead of saying, go to your room and practice. It's a totally different approach to get them out there and playing. And the more they play, ultimately, they're going to play the stuff that they need to.
And if you think about it, a lot of times parents will go to their kids' games and sit there and watch them play. But you're right, we always send them into a practice room and never hear them play. And that's what they want to do, is perform for us.
Oh, absolutely. My parents started this when I was in 4th and 5th grade. I wasn't an excellent practicer. I'll admit that. Probably not until high school. But ultimately, every day after dinner, as they were cleaning up, they asked if I would please play them a song. And I would set my music stand up in the doorway of the kitchen, and it would take me a half an hour to play them all the songs that they wanted to hear. And I found out later on in life that they were actually looking at my lesson book. So they were asking me to play those songs because they saw that they were marked as, this is what needs to be prepared for the next lesson.
Oh, that's a really devious way to get you to practice. I like that a lot.
Yeah, but they never once asked me to practice, and I never once said no.
One of my other interviewers talked about how we don't perform enough. And I like that, because in your mind, you were performing for your parents. And so performance anxiety wasn't there because you had been performing for them.
Oh, absolutely. Every opportunity you can get to perform, it's makes everything come together a lot easier, I think. And my students have to perform for each other a lot of times.
Yeah,
just snap performances. So.
Yeah, we were talking about how you sometimes there's only one performance a year, and no wonder we're anxious if we haven't been performing. I think you probably addressed this, but let me ask, what is your best strategy to combat frustration and quitting?
Moving slowly. I think accomplishing small bits and pieces so that we attack what we're preparing as an attainable goal instead of looking at, let's say, a symphony piece that maybe a high school kid would be trying to prepare, not looking at it as, that's 23 pages of music I have to learn. But it's 4 measures here and 4 measures here that I have to get as a practice goal, so that we're attaining these goals consistently throughout our practice throughout the week.
I like that, consistent goals. That's really good. So I know that parents put a lot of time and money into these activities. Do you have a word of encouragement for them?
Keep going. Keep going. After your student can play football or soccer, they can pick up their musical instrument, and what you're teaching them or having them learn through this musical journey that they've started is something that's a lifelong thing. I have met people that are 80 years old and they can barely walk, but they can still play their trumpet, or they can still play a violin, or their wheelchair can accommodate that cello. And it's long after they can say, I can throw a football, I can kick a soccer ball, which are all important, healthy things to be doing as well. But music is really that lifelong thing that you're investing in.
And I think people forget that because there's technology and you can have a symphony or a rock concert in your living room at the push of a button, it's not quite the same as learning an instrument.
Well, it's not, but if we can incorporate the technology that kids are so excited about into our practice by using practice tracks or metronomes or things that can happen on iPads and computers now, I think that also helps the excitement of practice, so that you're not always playing alone.
One of the most exciting things you do is a rock camp. And can you talk about how you get the kids involved in that? By picking the music, things that you do to get them to work on the songs?
Sure. The rock camp that we do is called Infused Orchestra, and I'm going to give myself a plug there. You can see it online, but it is a once-a-week summer camp that runs for 8 weeks up here in the Fox Valley. The kids come for an hour-and-a-half rehearsal. We skillfully choose music that is classic rock that the parents understand and modern rock that the kids understand, and hopefully we can bridge that gap to make everybody excited about the music. I have a great staff of 13 pro musicians that are super excited about making sure that the students work through and prepare this concert. This year we're doing 21 pieces, an hour and 30 minutes of music in 8 hours of rehearsal.
Wow, that's a lot.
The music teachers out there are going, oh my gosh. It's a lot, but we use the same strategy of small sectional rehearsals, nailing the 1 measure or 4 measure things that are really super difficult right away, making sure that they have a practice strategy to achieve that goal in a timely manner, and then these big rehearsals to put it all together. And the kids really feel ownership in making sure that they can play the part. So that ultimately we're practicing towards the concert there, but we're also giving them rhythm and technique things to go home and work on every week. So they have, a very finite goal of a couple of measures in these certain pieces that we're going to play as a group the next week.
So one of the things that I don't remember when I was learning is was no rock music really available for us. So how can a parent and child find music that they can play in the rock and the country? What are some recommendations you have for them?
Well, there's many music publishers out there that do now have solo play-along books so that you can get the lead sheet and a play-along track, and a lot of them have MP3 libraries that you can sign up on. So check either with your local music store or do some surfing online, but you can get almost anything in a solo instrument for strings for sure, and there's a ton of stuff out there for band as well.
You reminded me, because I had a family that bought the Michael Jackson play along, And it was
Yeah.
really cool to see the girl get all excited about Michael Jackson, and the mom's like, oh, I remember this. So they actually bonded over her learning the Michael Jackson music.
Oh yeah, anytime that you can make a connection with your child by picking music that makes them excited to play it and you excited to listen to it, I think that's really a great thing to keep that musical journey moving.
That's a really good idea for parents and students to do. So, do you have some suggestions for parents and teachers to keep the habits of excellence going in the children?
Yeah, always keep the kid's interest in mind. The person that's practicing always has to be engaged, always has to be excited. And learning technique and scales is not exciting, but learning technique and scales so that you can play the music that you love is very exciting. So be sure that there is always a good connection between what you're learning and what you're actually digging down and working on and what you can finally do in a performance. And I think we need to be sure that we're being creative so that we can hook every kid when we're talking about classroom teaching. We need to really be eclectic in how we choose our repertoire and not always be driven into you have to learn these three Bach, Beethoven, Mozart, Verdi pieces, and we're really crunched into that. There's nothing saying that we can't play Mozart and AC/DC and the Beatles and a fiddle tune all on the same concert. I don't think the hall walls will shake if we do that, with the exception of thunderous applause and excitement from the kids that are.
Well, and there's so much great music out there. And I think one of the things we suffer from is there's so much music that we can play. It's hard to focus on, okay, we like to do the classical because we know that. But one of the things is, trying to expand our repertoire as teachers into the rock and jazz and the improvisation that so many kids are getting in other places.
Yeah, absolutely. But take a chance, dive in there. You might be really surprised at what the kids actually recognize, maybe from their parents' radio or a jukebox someplace. And it can really be fun and engaging. And you can make a good connection with the kids or the musicians or the students, whoever you happen to be working with at the time.
That sounds really great. So are there any last things before we close that you'd like to share with parents and teachers that we didn't cover?
Well, just remember that the first year of building those tools in your toolbox is the hardest. So parents, hang in there. Teachers continue to, make it fun. And give the kids words of encouragement and always be working towards a performance, even if it's in your living room or backyard.
That sounds really good. Well, thank you so much for participating in our interview series.
Thanks, Lyda. Appreciate it.